Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ask a Career Coach. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to answer some of the questions that we have been getting into our inbox. And so let me just quickly start it off with sharing who I am, a little bit about my organization, the company, and what I do. I'm streaming both live here on TikTok as well as on Facebook. So I am Dr. Kristy Taylor. I'm a social impact career coach. I am the founder of Work Solutions LLC. You know us as Career Coach RX on TikTok. Here at Work Solutions, we empower individuals and organizations in the social impact sector. We specifically work with individuals in healthcare, education, nonprofits, and faith-based institutions. Now, if you follow us on TikTok, all of the content that we post on TikTok is applicable to any career field because we're always posting answers to interview questions, how to deal with tough situations. And so tonight, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be answering some of those questions that you have been sending to our inbox and give you some career advice about towards the end of this. I have a major announcement that I'm going to make. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, then you'll be able to kind of see my screen. So I'm going to start off with one of the questions that came into our inbox as recently as yesterday. So again, if you're tuning in on TikTok, if you're tuning in on across any of our social medias, we had scheduled this event for last month, but unfortunately I was unable to do it. So I have a bunch of different questions that you guys sent to me, and you can continue to send stuff to our inbox, and then we'll do these live chats and answer them. And so a question that we received yesterday was, hey, Career Coach RX, I have a meeting tomorrow, so I'm unable to attend. And the question was, what are some tips or pointers you can use when being interviewed? And it is very clear that the person who is interviewing you or a group of people who are interviewing you, they do not have an interest in what you're saying. So that can happen. You know, sometimes we do interviews and we don't always connect with the employer, right? So that's why one thing I'm going to tell you is to always do your research before you go into these interviews. But what you have to do as the person who's being interviewed, you have to learn to read the room and kind of respond based on if you see, for example, that they prefer that you answer the questions concisely, then that's how you respond. So if you're in a situation where you're in an interview and it doesn't seem like you're really connecting with the interviewer, you can kind of tell by the body language that this person's not, or this group of individuals not really feeling you. Pay attention to the nonverbal cues, and you just have to push on. You have to maintain good posture, make good eye contact. You still project confidence in that situation. You still provide enthusiastic responses, but at the same time, you are reading the room. You're trying to figure out what is really going to work, because whether it works or not, right, you still want to provide, be professional, and get through that interview. You need to stay focused on what you bring to the table, your value, and how what you do really aligns and fits with the job. So make sure that before you go into that interview, you've already prepared. You've used the STAR method, or we teach the PACE method here at Career Coach RX. You also, stay positive. If you're not connecting with the interview, don't take it personally. If you're not connecting with that employer, don't take it personally. But remember, pay attention to what and how they're responding to your questions and kind of read the room and adapt yourself accordingly. So if they prefer that you answer the questions in a way that are more concise, do that. If they want a little bit longer or more in-depth answer, do that. Also, if you're sharing examples of projects or achievements that you have done, and you say something that really gets them engaged, then again, expand a little bit on that story. Focus more on the opportunity. And then again, I teach a lot about shifting your mindset. Not everybody's going to be for you. So if you go into a situation where you're interviewing with an employer and it's not a good fit, it's just not a good fit. You can try to adapt to make the best of that interview, but also you want to also be reading the room to say, is this employer a good fit for me? You press on in the interview. Make sure that when you get done with the interview, in the same way that you came in that professional manner, that you follow up. Remember that your skills and experience, they do matter. And if this is not the job for you, you will find the right fit. Stay focused on presenting yourself as the best candidate for the job, because it's a two-way street. That they may be looking at you as, okay, this person's not a good fit, but you need to look at them. Are they a good fit for me? You should be able to ask for your worth and be seen as a person of value. All right, here's another question that came to our inbox when we initially did the advertisement for Ask a Career Coach. So This question is from Aisha. She says that I have been working in customer service for a few years. She wants to be more creative. She loves writing and always has dreamed of being a novelist, but she's unsure if this is a realistic career path for her. And the question that she had for me is, how can I explore my writing passion while maintaining financial stability? So I think about myself. I think about people who are seeking creative outlets. So if you're wanting to be an influencer, for example, some people, they blow up instantly, right? So what do you do in this case where you have this true passion for something, you want to pursue it, but you want to be able to maintain and be financially stable? Well, if you know that you have a gift and you're working in that gift, one of the things that you have to do is look for other ways to make money off of that gift, right? So in Aisha's case, I'm in my notes. I'm glad I had time to look at this, right? Aisha, I'm really glad that you know what your gift is and you know what you're passionate about. So one of the things that I would recommend to you in seeking financial stability is look for those outlets where you can make money. Things like content marketing. Maybe you can work in a communications department where you're writing content, which will still allow you to be able to pursue what you want to pursue on the side, right? But you're able to make money from this gift that you have. Things like copywriting. Even though AI is really popular, right? People are using AI for everything. Good old SEO writing, with keywords is still a thing, and people are still able to make money off of that. I got offered a contracting opportunity today to be able to do that. So also consider things like freelance writing. If it's something that you really enjoy, find a way to monetize that and turn that into a passion for yourself. And you keep writing the books that you're passionate about. Find groups that you can join so that you can get information, share that info, and get feedback on what you're doing so that you can continue to improve. Okay, so I'm just going through some of these quickly. Isabel wrote in. This is a common scenario that I see as a career coach. Isabel told me that she is a single mom. She has a young child. She's been out of the workforce for a while. She would like to be able to return after a long absence. And she's asking, Dr. Taylor, how can I bridge the gap in my resume and find a flexible work arrangement? So, Isabel, if you're listening in, here is my advice to you. One, up front that you need a flexible work arrangement. Now, one of the great things about post-COVID is that there are many opportunities to be able to work from home. There are many job boards that you can join. There's many things you have to just know what you want up front. So when you go into the job search process, you can focus on being able to create and tailor your resume around the jobs that you want to pursue. So here's a few things. I have clients who all of the time come back to me after not being in the workforce for a while. One of the things that I really focus on with them is identifying the transferable skills. What volunteer work have you done? What type of courses have you taken? Even if you have been involved with the PTA, I have, examples. I work with a lot of nurses, again, because I focus on healthcare, education, nonprofits, and faith-based organizations. But years ago, when I first started this business as healthcare consultant, the main base of my clients are still nurses. We have people that are out of work for many reasons. That you might have been had a full-time job. You may have stopped it to take care of your family. You may have gotten sick. You may have became the caretaker to somebody, and now you're returning to the workforce. So the three things I'm going to tell you is four things. Know what type of job that it is that you're going to be looking for. Be upfront with yourself about and be realistic. Okay, here's where I want to go. I only want to work online. I only want to work from home. And so that's what you focus on, unless you're in a situation where you have to get a job to bridge that gap immediately, right? So once you really know what it is that you want to do, then what you're going to do is you're going to sit down and to fill in that gap, you're going to identify all these transferable skills that you have based on the things that you have done, volunteer work. I mean, I have even used the fact that if I have a client who comes to me and they were a caretaker, I use that in their resume and their cover letter to say, like, here are the skills. I was a full-time caretaker. Here are the skills that I utilized, right, or was applying during that time period. And that helps to kind of create the narrative of where the client wants to go. So highlight transferable skills, consider freelance opportunities. I absolutely always advise people, open up an LLC for yourself, right? Because if you've been out of work for a while, if you open up an LLC for yourself, a lot of times in the state, they can cost anywhere from $50 to, a couple of $100 to open up an LLC. But if you don't have a full-time job, that LLC can help you to bridge the gap between that work period where you were unemployed, because you can use that LLC to cover down and be able to do freelance work. And then the other last piece of advice in terms of filling in the gap, again, did you do any part-time roles? Did you own a business, something that you can fill in the gap? And then just blatantly state it in the cover letter. Like, hey, I've been out of work for a while. I have been a full-time caretaker. I have been, I've been a stay-at-home mom. This has been the last few years of my life. Just be upfront and talk about and focus on, here's the things that I've done during that time, and I'm ready to return to the workforce. It is not a big a deal as you might think, especially in these more high demand career areas. Okay. So before I move on from that question, Isabel, the one piece of advice that I would give you, or anybody who is working from home or, just returning to the workforce, keep your skills updated so that when you do decide to return to work, you'll have something there to say, look, while I was out of the workforce, here are the things that I was doing to kind of keep my skills updated, right? Right. So that was Isabella. Now here's another anonymous submission. This person says, Dr. Taylor, I constantly find myself sacrificing personal time for work, and it's taking a toll on my well-being. Have you ever struggled to find balance between work and personal life? And how did you manage to prioritize both? Well, I think that this is something that we all go through and we all experience, right? Because work-life balance can be a difficult thing, especially I think about myself trying to run a business, working a full-time job, serving in the military. I have a lot going on, right? But that is no different from the average person who has families 24 hours in a day. You just have to figure it out. But here's the thing I'm going to tell you. The world still turns if you stop and take a break. So you can't push yourself off a cliff you got to prioritize your mental health. And it's okay to say, today I need to take a break. And sometimes you might not always, given the time, you might not always be able to take a whole day for a break. I have a flexible job where I can say, hey, I need to be able to work from home today. It's just a lot, right? But if you can't do that, start with 5 minutes. Start where you are. If you can only take 5 minutes in the morning, start with 5 minutes. Keep working up to 15 minutes. But you having a healthy work-life balance is going to be essential for your overall well-being. If you are the breadwinner, if you are the person who people are depending on, what good is it going to do for you to be able to not be in a position where you can take care of your responsibilities? So part of your taking care of your responsibilities mean that you are taking care of yourself. As a coach, I don't sell dreams. I know that people have jobs, they have bills, they have family, they have things to do. So what I tell you is what I'm going to tell you today. Start where you are. If you are finding a difficult time, having a hard time, finding balance, start with 5 minutes. All I can do is 5 minutes today. I'm just going to take a few deep breaths. I'm going to wake up earlier in the morning, but find some time to carve out for yourself. So the other thing is just establishing clear boundaries. Sometimes we just don't want to say no, right? You have to establish clear boundaries between your work and your personal life. I like this little tiny office space that I have here because once I close the door, then I know that my work is done. And sometimes this involves setting specific work hours, you designating a time for yourself to take a break. Believe me, the world will still turn. I've heard somebody say, hey, if I passed away today, the HR department will advertise the job tomorrow, right? So you might feel like, man, this job will not make it without me. But I guarantee you, if you die today, they're still going to advertise your position tomorrow. So just remember that if you are the main person who's leading, whether you're the main person or not, and you have all of these responsibilities, your number one priority has to be to take time for yourself to find some balance. It can be hard. That's probably one of the hardest things to do when we have so much responsibility and the world is tugging at us. But we have to find a way to do it because, like I said earlier, what good is it going to do for you if you don't take care of yourself? I'm gonna move on to the next question because that topic of work-life balance is just it really just starts with the most basic level of taking care of yourself, prioritizing yourself, and learning to just start where you are. You do not have, it's not going to be a whole holistic change all at once, right? All right, so the next question that I have for Ask a Career Coach is from Ryan. Ryan says, I feel like I'm drowning in my workload and I don't know how to stay afloat. Ryan is asking me, have I ever felt overwhelmed with my job responsibilities and how did I regain control? Well, of course, I think that any of us, again, just like with the previous question with work-life balance, it is not uncommon to feel overwhelmed with your job and responsibilities, right? It's a common experience, particularly in today's work environment. Again, COVID gave us a little bit more flexibility, but for some frontline workers, and it just got tougher. And especially if you're in jobs where you have leadership, where there's limited resources, what do? But one thing that you can do, Ryan, is you can prioritize tasks based on urgency and importance. I'm gonna look directly at my phone to say this. Everybody's emergency, just because it's an emergency to that person doesn't mean it's an emergency to you, right? So I got both phones. So prioritize, because people will come to you and say, hey, this is an emergency situation. It's urgent, right? Well, when does the project due? Why is it so urgent? Why is it so urgent that it's put in front of me right now when I have 1,000 other urgent projects? So listen to them, hear them out, but remember that everybody's emergency, just because it's an emergency to somebody else, doesn't mean it's an emergency to you. And so you have to remove your emotions from it, because the first thing that we'll do is we'll respond. We'll jump on board and respond. And, I got to do this. I got to get it done because that person is coming to you in their emotions. But part of having boundaries mean that you can control yourself emotionally. And yes, I'm going to listen and hear you out, but then I'm going to prioritize this based on, is it truly a emergency situation or is it just an emergency to that person? And particularly when you're in a professional office environment, if your leadership is saying this is a priority, then you have to have enough emotional intelligence and sense of self-advocacy to say, okay, well, this is the priority. I get it. We move, because sometimes we can't change what leadership is saying to prioritize. But then you have to push back and go, okay, if everything is urgent and this is the priority, this project was due on this day. So how are we going to shift this project? Are we going to push the date back? You got to talk about it and you got to get it in writing. Okay. Talk about it, get it in writing to confirm, especially if your professional, your evaluations, your annual evaluations are going to be based on you being able to deliver. So again, we can't always control everything, but just remember these factors. Just because it's an emergency to somebody else doesn't mean it's an emergency to you. And in the process of prioritizing, we are listening to people to really see what the issue is, and we're going to talk through it with that person. Sometimes from leadership, we do get tasked with stuff that we can't push back on and say, well, I will do this at a later date. If they're telling you it's a priority, every boss has a boss. So I get it, right? So then what you have to do is talk to your leadership and say, okay, what are we going to do to work out these other things that are priority? We're going to shift the dates on this. How is that going to look? And I always try to get that in writing, right? So that it won't come back to bite you. Just a couple of more pieces of thought on that question. Again, if you're feeling overwhelmed, everything's a priority. Another thing you can do just outside of generally prioritizing is delegating. So if you have a team that you can delegate tasks to, do that. Entrepreneurship is hard, right? So if you're listening in and you are in the business of entrepreneurship, then you have to recognize it as a business professional. You wear different hats at different times, especially if you're just starting off. You're not going to be able to do everything at once. So today you might focus on marketing. The next day you might focus on strategic planning. The next day you might focus on finance. You wear different hats in your business. So learn how to prioritize those things. And if you're in entrepreneurship, learn that on the day that you're wearing this hat, that's the hat that you're wearing. You don't dibble and dabble until you can hire out those roles. In either case, when we talk about prioritizing, delegating, the last thing that I'm going to tell you here, outside of the traditional self-care, because all this plays in it, is learn to take those bigger tasks, break them up into more manageable tasks, because that can be another thing that may be overwhelming you when you're given large projects. and you don't break those projects down into more manageable tasks, it can really take a toll on your mental health. So again, remember that everybody's emergency is not your emergency. When people come to you and they're talking in emotion, just listen, and then respond in a way that demonstrates that you have listened. But just because it's an emergency to them doesn't mean it's an emergency to you. If you're being pushed down information and told to do it, like from your boss, well, then that's just life. And so you have to work that with them to say, like, hey, what is going to be the real priority here, and what are going to be the specific dates? We're going to reset some things. The last thing is, if you are given projects, break them up into smaller manageable pieces. And if you're able to delegate, do. And then my final follow-up on that is, if you're running a business, and especially if you're new to running a business, break those tasks up into different areas so that you're not overwhelmed with all of the different hats that you have to play when running a business. All right, so question number 5 came from David. David, it was straight up. He said, hey, Dr. Taylor, I am in a toxic work environment and my boss is very difficult. Should I start looking for a new job, or can I try to improve the situation? Well, David, I'm going to wear my HR hat for a little bit. So a toxic work environment, first of all, it can be very impactful on your well-being, right? And so here goes some options that I kind of jotted down. First of all, you need to be talking to your boss. You need to be talking to the people in charge. You need to be making sure that you're heard, whether it's the HR, whatever the reporting mechanism is. You need to be talking to whoever's in charge. And if your boss is a toxic person, which you're saying, I believe this is what you're saying, you just need to make sure, one, that you're documenting any incidents. So if one good thing is, when you have these conversations about things that occur or things that you find that are concerning, document the incident. Not only just document it, but a great thing that I like to do is, when I have difficult conversations, I always go back with an email to say, hey, I'm glad that we were able to talk today. And here were a few things that we discussed, and here were the kind of things that we agreed upon, right? So you keep a record of any abusive behavior, unfair treatment, times that you have went to. Make sure you CC, you engage with all of the people that you're supposed to be engaged with, so that in case if you need to pursue a conflict resolution process, that can be in place. I already mentioned here, having direct conversations. If you feel comfortable, you have to attempt to have a direct conversation, but still follow that direct conversation up with some form of documentation if you're experiencing a difficult work environment. And finally, what I'm going to say here is, explore your internal options. So your company might have an employee assistance program. Really, you should be looking at the HR department. But one thing I'm going to tell you about HR, right? They work for the company, right? And HR is a delicate balance, because they are here to support the employee, but they're also here to protect the company. So you have to make sure that if you're going to do an HR complaint, that all of your ducks are in a row. You've done the appropriate documentation and followed up your proper chain or workflow, however that looks. Okay, so it's 5:25, and I've answered about 5 questions. I'm going to do one more, and then I have a special announcement for those who are tuning in to listen to us on our Facebook and YouTube Live, things that I want to share with you all about stuff that's coming up with Work Solutions. All right, so my last question I'm going to answer, then I'll jump back on, because I have a bunch of these questions in my inbox. I'll jump back on maybe sometime next month or early next month to answer the rest of these questions. This question came from Sarah. Sarah says she's a teacher. Okay, Sarah, a little bit of shared background. But after 10 years in the classroom, she is feeling burnt out. However, she still has a passion for education and helping others. And she wants to know, are there some additional options outside of being in the classroom? Because she still has a passion for helping others. She still has a passion for education, but how can she utilize her skills as a teacher to transfer out of a traditional classroom setting? Sarah, I'm so glad you asked this question. I actually just helped a few clients who were in the same situation. Okay, so first of all, I want to say, as a former teacher myself, I really appreciate your dedication to teaching. And even if you feel that being in the classroom at this point in time is not where you want to be, you still want to find ways to make an impact. So some options that I kind of jotted down for you would be one, remember that you are trained as a teacher, so you can facilitate, you are trained in instructional design. So go with one, instructional design. You know how to build curriculum, and depending on like you've already had 10 years in teaching, so being able to do consulting, building curriculum, and as an instructional designer, you'll be able to develop educational materials and courses for online learning platforms or corporate training programs. You might actually decide to go into education yourself. There are a lot of jobs, even working in the federal government, where you can leverage your background in teaching and education to do like educational program development. You might decide to take that 10 years of experience that you have and go into educational consulting, like especially if you have been dealing with state exams and requirements and you have consistently been getting great scores. That might be an option for you. Again, you might move into the federal government contracting sector. And another thing I kind of just jotted down here was you might also be able to focus on supporting nonprofit organizations like with literacy programs, adult education, or specialized training. Because remember that as a teacher, you are trained in facilitation, you are trained in instructional design, group dynamics, project management. There's a whole lot of things that you crossover skills that you have as an educator that you can use to move into another position. So I'm going to stop right here because I've kind of reached that 30-minute mark. I want to say thank you guys for everybody who tuned in tonight to listen to me answer your questions. I will be back in the coming weeks with Ask a Career Coach and telling you some of the exciting things that we're doing here at Work Solutions. And if you have any questions that you want me to answer, please, by all means, send them to our inbox and we will get them on our list to be able to answer during these lives. So again, thanks for tuning in and you guys have a great night.